what is the sun? The sun is a big fusion generator. It generates lots of sunlight. And we're lucky enough on the Earth to get a very, very small portion of that, but it really is a lot of energy. So the sun produces about, let's see if I remember my numbers, 6.2 yotawatts of energy instantaneously all the time. Yotawatt is 23 zeros. So that's a lot of energy. But that comes down to a very small portion of that reaching the Earth's surface. A square meter of the Earth, if that's getting that sunlight on it, gets 1,000 watts constantly if you've got direct sunlight on the Earth's surface. That's after passing through the atmosphere. Okay? So that's a lot of energy compared to a 10 kilowatt LED light bulb. If we could only convert the sunlight without any losses directly into electricity, we could power that light bulb or store it in a battery or whatever. But most solar collectors or panels can't just take the sunlight and store it into electricity or heat. You have some losses in the process. Here in Northeast Pennsylvania, our weather gets in the way, right? Certainly we have an average of 12 hours of sunlight a day if we had no weather to worry about. But with weather, you reduce that to about 4 hours a day. But still, 4 hours of sunlight is 25% more than Germany gets, and 25% more than Alaska gets. Germany is the world's leader in solar energy per person. Well, a lot of people will just say, I want to save money, and that's a great reason. But you can also go solar if you care about the planet and reducing your carbon footprint, care about the community and the health of the community. A lot of electricity is generated from fossil fuels, and not only does that put carbon in the atmosphere, but it also puts other pollution out there, whether it's air pollution or water pollution or coal ash that pollutes people who live near it. I will say that solar energy in whatever form, except maybe for the very simplest passive form, where you're not actually doing anything to spend money in any big way, is more expensive than saving energy in other ways. So reduce your use by behavior changes, improving your insulation, reducing your air leakage. All of those things will have a better financial return than going solar. And remember, no matter how much a sales pitch is made by an installer, don't fall for it. Make your conservation efforts go first. In Pennsylvania, about 2/3 of our energy supply, our electricity supply, is generated by fossil fuels. Another 30% or so is from nuclear. If you want to go to solar, that's a great way to change that. But today in Pennsylvania, the solar electricity supply is less than 0.5%. Okay, so we've got plenty of room to grow. And the good news is over the past 5 to 7 years, the cost of solar panels has dropped by about 80%. When we talk about solar energy, there are really 3 different forms of that are different than solar electricity. That's one of the forms. The other one is solar thermal or solar heating, and that's typically heating water or heating the interior of your house with space heating. That's another form. It can be an active form or a passive form. So passive solar is designing a house or a building with the appropriate facing windows. So the sunlight passes through the window into your home and heats the home. That's passive architecture, they'll call it. And that's really valuable for if you're building a new construction it's hard to change an existing building to be passive. They're air sealed very tightly, so you have to have mechanical ventilation actually, which is a good thing. If you go down in the tropics and do vacations, you'll see these solar thermal collectors on the roof of nearly every building in the tropics. Because once you put this on your roof, it's basically free hot water. The third type of solar electricity, maybe the most famous, is this International Space Station, which has big solar arrays that collect sun without the atmosphere in the way. And their technology is very different than the solar arrays we use here on Earth. They are like 30% efficient at converting electricity or sunlight into electricity. Here in the real world, using silicon technology, which is very passive, doesn't have any pollution issues, the best conversion is about 22% from sunlight into electricity. Though it's a very expensive panel, the 19 to 18% conversion rate is what you'll find in most domestic solar panels today. Regardless of your technology and the type of solar energy, the two things you need to worry about are orientation and shading. Okay? Orientation is how the panel is mounted or oriented toward the sun. The perfect orientation is exactly perpendicular to the sun rays. So if the sun was fixed in the sky, you could mount the panel perfectly and have it perpendicular to those sun and collect the maximum efficiency. However, the sun doesn't do that. The sun rises in the morning, sets in the afternoon. It sets in a different place every day of the year and is lower in the sky in the winter than high in the sky in the summer. So we can't get always perpendicular unless you pay for an expensive tracking mount. Usually not financially worth it. Most people will want to mount the solar panels on their roof or in a fixed array, like on the ground. Is that location where you're putting a solar collector shaded by power lines, by utility poles, a satellite dish, a dormer, the trees in the yard or the neighbors, the hill ridge up on the mountain nearby? All of those things can make the solar collection less than that 4 hours a day average. So you need to be aware of your solar window, it's called. In our area, because we're at the 41 north latitude, we have a window that's below that at about 18 degrees in the winter is the bottom of the window, because it's 23 degrees below the 41, if I did the math right. And then 23 degrees higher than 41 in the summer is the maximum height of the window at noon in a summer day. And then about 9 o'clock in the morning is the time the sun's high enough to strike the panel at a good angle. And 3 in the afternoon is the earliest time the window closes in the winter before it's too far down on the horizon. So that defines the solar window in the sky. And then you can use a device like this one, which is called a solar pathfinder, to check the local shadows on the device. And with one measurement, you can check the shadows for any time of the day, any month of the year from one location, on that location. Make one measurement. So it's a useful device to put on your roof to see if there's another building or a tree next door that's shading your roof at parts of the day or parts of the year. And that's what we use to do the calculations to figure out how much of that 4 hours a day you really get. Budget. Not everybody can afford it. It's not an inexpensive investment. But often you can't install as much as you'd like. A roof-mounted system at this scale is going to be less expensive per watt, per unit of production, than a ground mount. If you're doing a ground mount, you have to install poles, have to dig pylons, have to put in a trench. those things are extra that if you're putting it on a roof, you don't have to deal with. The good thing though about a ground mount is you can usually orient it perfectly. The right tilt angle, the right orientation east-west, so it faces exactly south. So you get a little more production, but you'll have to pay that extra cost of doing those trenches and the pylons and the poles. So that's a trade-off. Now at large scale, like 10 to 100 acres, a ground mount system can be much less expensive because they can get a truck that automates the digging of the pylons and puts all that up in a kind of a mechanic automated fashion. So large solar farms are a whole different economic equation. The most efficient way to convert sunlight into energy is actually a solar thermal collector to collect and heat water. So in most of our homes we have hot water. We love the hot water it produces, especially this time of year. But solar thermal collectors typically will only produce about 50% of your hot water need at any one time of the year. 100% or more in the summer, and very little, maybe 10 or 20% in the winter. So you typically will size a solar thermal system just for your summer load of hot water. Or a family of 2 or family of 4 needs 1 or 2 collectors, maybe 3 or 4 if you're a larger family. And those prices have not changed much in the last 5 years. They're still fairly expensive because it's plumbing, fundamentally. You've got copper pipes that have to carry the hot water off the roof and connect it to your plumbing system. And every installation is unique because of that need to configure it to match your house. So one of the things I want to make sure you know too is that SEEDS offers a free solar site assessment to any residential home that joins the SEEDS organization. All you need to do is to donate to SEEDS a $10 membership one time, and I'll be glad to sign up when you do so. And myself or one of the other volunteers will be glad to come to your home and give you an unbiased solar assessment. We're not installers, we're not contractors, we're just volunteers who are excited to help promote and educate people. We'll give you a solar assessment, or if you're a Wayne County business, we'll give you a free solar assessment for your business as well. It's an organization here based in Honesdale, serves Wayne and Pike counties. We are about 85 members, last I counted. And members of the co-op are basically financing solar systems in the community and then providing the benefits back as a dividend. So we can't get them on your utility bill yet, but we can pay you once a year for the benefits of having invested in the solar system. The solar system on the Coop building was our first project 5 years ago. We're currently doing fundraising to put a solar array on the Storebridge Elementary School, the old elementary school that's now the Storebridge Project Innovation Center that the county owns on Park Street. And I want to give a chance to answer questions or ask situations because I've talked a lot and we haven't had a lot of interaction, and I apologize. Wind is a little more than that. It's about 1.5%.
Wind is actually more than solar.
Wind, yeah. More, yep. They've been around a lot longer in terms of economic for production. And new wind turbines are still being added in Pennsylvania, actually. I've heard rumors that our existing wind farm on the Moosic Ridge is going to be expanded soon. There's at least discussion of 6 new turbines being added to that, and maybe some of the existing ones replaced with taller turbines. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I've heard that discussion. So wind is about 1.5%. That may include hydro as well. Okay. So total renewable energy in Pennsylvania is about 2%. Hydro, wind, and solar. It's more efficient. But there's less sunlight. So it's a trade-off. So actually the best day I've ever had on my own solar system was a day in late March. Okay, so the sun is reasonably high in the sky, not quite the equinox. Well, actually it was equinox because the solar equinox is in March 22nd. So it got about 6 or 8 hours of good sunlight, and with the snow in front of the array on the ground, the light not only hit the array directly, but bounced off the snow directly onto the array, so it got more sun than it could directly. That was the single most best day I've ever had, was in late March. And it's cold. So another way, if you're an apartment renter, or if you don't have good solar access for your location, you could go to the papowerswitch.com, I believe.
Yep, that's right.
That's might be .org, but I think it's .com.
Just PPL. If you go to the PPL website, you can sign
You
up.
can switch from there.
You can
Right.
switch from there.
So
It's an environmental group that vets them.
So PA Power Switch is the website run by the Public Utility Commission, and it will present the different choices you have for getting your supplier based on the attributes of, is it a green source? And by law, each third-party producer is required to identify their sources of electricity. Now, sometimes they just identify it in very small print. Some of them will advertise specifically. They are wind producers or some combination of wind and solar.
And there's an environmental group you can access through the PPL website and they
Right.
rate the different suppliers.
So they spend the time looking at all that fine print and rate the suppliers. The challenge, of course, there is almost always the green suppliers are charging a premium for that electricity. So that 6.3 cents for commercial will probably be like 7.5 cents instead. And some of them charge 2 cent premium. So it really depends. So Pennsylvania has, except for that SREC program I mentioned, has almost no solar incentives. And that program is about to end in 18 months. In New York, the solar incentives are just everywhere. And that's one of the reasons you see a lot more solar arrays in New York and New Jersey. In New Jersey, their SREC program pays about $185 per megawatt hour of electricity your array produces. Compare that to here at $35. And you can see the difference in incentives that they have. New York also offers state tax credits, and they have a green bank that will commercially loan money for commercial systems at low interest rates. We don't have any of that. Yeah, the solar panels are really wonderful things because they are made up of aluminum frames, glass, silicon, and a little PVC backing. So there's no mechanical things to break down. Every domestic manufacturer, or every credible manufacturer, domestic and international, will warranty their panels for 25 or 30 years. Okay? 25 or 30 years. So the expected life of the panel itself is that time. And they're pretty good at withstanding most weather events. I've seen videos of 1-inch hail accelerated and thrown at the panel with a big air gun. And the glass is pretty good. It doesn't crack in that case. So most of them are warranted, including against that kind of weather event. Now, that doesn't say the installer installed it to give you fully prevention against tornado damage or really high winds. But the panel itself is pretty durable. The electronics that go with the panel typically are only warranted for 10 or 15 years. So the electronics, which are usually less than 10% of the cost of the whole system, might need to be replaced in that 10 to 15 year period. And until about 6 months ago, the only data I had was from Livermore, California. I'm sorry, Berkeley, California. But there was just a study released, I have to find the link again, done in Pittsburgh that said solar panels on a home in Pittsburgh raised the retail price of the home by about 7.5%. Okay, so resale value is being appreciated more by buyers because they know when they buy that home, they'll have a lower utility bill. One of the challenges, though, I will say, is some, especially residential insurance companies, will charge you a premium to cover the solar panel on your roof. So there is a chance, it's not all insurance companies are the same, but if you are looking to add solar to your building, whether it's commercial or residential, check with your insurance company and make sure they will cover it and that they won't charge you extra. Some commercial insurance companies won't even cover it. That's changing in the last few years, but I can tell you when we installed the solar system on the Coop roof 5 years ago, the building owner had to change insurance companies because the original insurance company she had would not cover it. What I've seen is great papers that say they can do great things, but seeing it in the field is another world. So NREL publishes a state of the research every year, and they've got these different technology lines on the chart that are ranging from 0 to 100%, and showing how the technology has improved in the research lab on a regular basis. But taking it out to the field and actually experiencing it.
As opposed to getting a company set of specs.
Dealing with the winds, dealing with mounting, dealing with the expansion of the cell in cold to hot, cold to hot, cold to hot, and how it deals with thermal expansion. Particularly the building integrated cells have had that problem because the printed material on this roof tile doesn't adhere as well with the change in temperature. So it works fine the first year and it starts deteriorating after that.
If you have
Another good question. So one thing to remember about solar, as we talked about it today, is it requires the grid to be active and working. So the solar system needs the synchronization signal from the grid to operate effectively. Without that synchronization signal, it shuts down and doesn't produce electricity, and that's a good thing from a safety point of view because you don't want to electrocute some lineman working on the utility line to repair it if it's down. Just like a home generator, it has to have a transfer switch to operate offline, and you usually have to pay for an inverter that's a more expensive inverter than the basic one to be able to operate off without utility synchronization. The next step up is to add a battery pack so that your solar system can charge the batteries and you could save the energy to yourself instead of having it go out and operate as a billing credit. I did add battery packs to our house, mainly to be able to power the house if the utility grid goes down for a snowstorm or some other tree on the lines in the neighborhood. It's expensive. The battery packs were Tesla battery packs that I added. I've got 27 Powerwalls is the brand, is the model they call it, Powerwall 2. It's 27 kilowatt hours of backup electricity, and they cost about $15,000.
And how long will that last?
For me, in our house, for the 8 months of spring through fall, that 26 kilowatt hours would probably be infinite, because the sun would recharge the batteries every day, or every third day even. And I don't use a lot of electricity in the summer. We don't use air conditioning. But this time of year, that 27 kilowatt hours might be 4 to 5 hours, because I've got heating in our house, which is electric, based on mini split heat exchangers. So they, and especially on a cold winter day, that 27 kilowatt hours goes quick. In a week like this one, where there's no sunshine, you can't recharge the batteries. The good news though, is those battery packs, if hooked to a house with a solar array, they are also eligible for the 26% tax credit. So you can get back some of that $15,000. If you've got enough roof space, the average home in Pennsylvania needs about 10 megawatt hours of electricity. That's, today's technology is about 300 watts per panel. And if you've got a reasonable oriented roof, you can get 1,000 kilowatt hours for every kilowatt of capacity. Now I know I'm not doing this in quite the logical order. Okay, but that means 3-ish panels can produce a kilowatt hour, 100 kilowatt hours annually. So you need 30 of those panels to cover your 10 megawatt hour production usage. Okay, so 30 panels, that's 10 kilowatts of capacity at 300 watts per panel. Okay, if you multiply that 10 kilowatts by $2.50, okay, that's $25,000. Okay. Now that's before tax credits. You get 26% of that back in a tax credit if you pay income tax. And you can get some of it back by selling us rights, at least for the next few months, 18 months. Solar panels can be fully recycled. Unfortunately, we don't yet have a defined recycling program in this part of the country. California and the western states have adopted recycling requirements for solar panels. Now the good news is it's usually all the solar systems that have been installed in the last 5 to 10 years are still out there operating. And in fact, solar panels from the 1970s are still operating as well. So there hasn't been a lot of demand for recycling of panels yet. But because they're basically PVC, aluminum, glass, silicon, the same material we see in our computers and our phones, that material can be recycled. It just needs to have a program to do it. Thank you. Thank you all. All right, 7 o'clock, almost perfect.